Hey guys, welcome back to GX Story Sleeping. Tonight we're going somewhere less than ideal. You're going to wake up in the back of a creaky wooden cart, your hands tied, your head pounding, and the smell of rotting hay in your nose. The sun's barely risen, but already the air is thick with dust and the hum of voices you don't understand. And up ahead, a bustling medieval slave market. This isn't a role play. You're not visiting, you're for sale. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and your local time. I love seeing how far this sleepy little history ride travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for the soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The cart lurches again, jolting your spine, your wrists are chafed, and the rope's been tied by someone with a real overachiever complex. The road is cobbled but worn, the wheels hitting dips every few seconds. A seagull cries above. You're near a port, or a river maybe. The scent of fish blends with manure and sweat. You try to sit up, but your head bumps a rusted chain nailed into the cart's frame. Another person groans beside you, maybe asleep, maybe not. As you peek through the slats, the town unfurls like a poorly drawn map. Stone buildings sag under thatched roofs. A crowd bustles near a central square, where voices rise like gulls fighting over bread. Flags flap overhead, faded reds and golds, bearing symbols you don't recognize. One looks like a lion riding a sword, which feels unnecessarily aggressive for a flag. You've arrived. Two guards yank open the back of the cart. You get your first good breath of the morning air, which, honestly, maybe stick with the cart. The mix of livestock, fish, and body odor is genuinely insulting. You're pulled out by the arm, feet hitting the uneven stone. Someone behind you whispers a prayer in a language you don't speak. Someone in front of you coughs violently, probably the first of many coughing cameos tonight. You shuffle in a line with other captives, some in rags, some barely dressed. A woman 2 spots ahead is limping, and a child clings to her side. The child stares at you, not crying, just watching. And somehow that's worse. One seller calls out bids before you're even in place. You hear numbers thrown like insults. 2 denarii, he's barely got teeth. A scholarly debate still lingers about the exact value of different coins across regions. But here's the general idea. You're cheaper than a goat, more expensive than a sack of onions. Congratulations. Your captor is a round man with too much confidence and too little soap. He jabs you in the ribs with a staff to get you moving. You pass under a wooden arch etched with symbols, possibly religious, possibly just graffiti. Beneath it lies the marketplace proper. It is overwhelming. Dozens of stalls, shouting buyers, cages, wooden platforms, a man holding a scale for no apparent reason. You're shoved onto a bench where others are waiting, and someone starts rubbing what feels like pig fat on your arms, probably to make you look healthier. You smell like greasy pork now. Fantastic. Suddenly, a young boy screams from a nearby stall. A buyer tries to drag him away by the ankle, and the boy clings to a post. No one intervenes. The merchant just rolls his eyes and mutters something about drama. You swallow hard. A mainstream fact most folks forget: medieval slavery wasn't just one thing. In Europe alone, it varied wildly. Some slaves were household servants, others were field workers, while a few were forced into less family-friendly roles. Slavery in Islamic markets, Byzantine territories, and even Viking regions often looked different, but none of it came with a benefits package or moral clarity. You wonder what you'll be. A cook? A cleaner? A cautionary tale? Your merchant eyes you like he's mentally scribbling your resume. He pokes your shoulder, sniffs you. Seriously? Why? Then yells something about foreign blood to a nearby buyer. You have no idea what that means, but apparently it adds 5 silver to your price. You're exotic. How fun. A fringe detail here. Some slave markets used smellers, actual individuals who claim to detect disease by scent alone. They'd sniff you like a truffle pig and make a call. You desperately hope this market didn't hire one today. A bell rings, and the auction starts in earnest. You're up in the next round. Your knees shake as the crowd gathers. You're shoved forward with a grunt. The wooden steps leading to the platform are slick with who knows what, and your bare feet skid slightly as you climb. The crowd tightens, dozens of faces leering upward. They squint, whisper, judge. You're the morning's entertainment, and you didn't even get to rehearse. The announcer, a man with a beard so majestic it deserves its own title, waves a stick in your direction like he's presenting a new kitchen appliance. He starts rattling off words in a thick local dialect, most of which mean absolutely nothing to you. You catch only a few: strong, young, maybe literate, charming, and then silence. The bearded man tilts your chin upward. He speaks again, and the crowd laughs, probably not in a good way. One woman in the front row, wearing far too much fur for this weather, narrows her eyes and calls something out. The announcer shrugs, then suddenly grabs your jaw and yanks your mouth open. You gag slightly as two fingers, unwashed of course, press down on your tongue. He's showing off your teeth. Yep, this is your job interview now. He pulls at your cheeks, squints at your molars, then turns you around and starts lifting your arms. Someone in the crowd claps. Another whistles. This inspection is less medical and more humiliating. You try to look calm, which is hard when your dignity has packed up and left the building. A man with a waxy forehead and velvet sleeves approaches, muttering to the announcer. They eye your legs like they're shopping for sausages. One of them jabs your calf with the butt of a riding crop. You flinch. Wrong move. They laugh. The velvet man snorts and walks off. You are not approved. Here's your historical tidbit for tonight's cringe pile. In some markets, buyers paid extra to run a personal inspection. That meant lifting limbs, poking scars, even demanding squat tests to check your knees. This was less about practicality and more about control. And let's face it, drama. A few scholars argue that these scenes were performative rituals designed to reinforce hierarchies, but most agree. It was just plain degrading. Back on the platform, a tall figure steps forward. He's got a pouch full of clinking coins and zero patience. The announcer brightens. Another bidder counters, shorter, sharper, dressed in thick wool. They go back and forth for a bit, voices rising, hands waving. The crowd loves it. It's like watching two pigeons fight over a sandwich, and you're the sandwich. Then something unexpected happens. The bidding stalls. You're pulled to the edge of the platform by a younger assistant, maybe 15, maybe just permanently short. He starts rattling off numbers and phrases to no one in particular. The crowd stirs. The tall man walks away, grumbling. The wool-clad bidder hesitates, then spits, right on the stage. And just like that, you're alone again. Rejected twice before lunch. The assistant tugs your arm and leads you off the platform to a different area. Less crowded, more shadowed. A backlot maybe, like the clearance section at a medieval thrift store. You sit beside two others, one missing a few fingers, the other asleep with their eyes open. You're the fresh face in the pile of misfit toys. Here's a lesser-known wrinkle. Not everyone in these markets was there because of war or crime. Some were debtors, sold off by desperate families. Others were kidnapped from coastal villages by raiders. You? Well, the story's unclear. You just woke up here. But based on your condition and the amused way people look at you, you probably weren't considered premium stock. An older man with ink-stained hands crouches in front of you. He speaks gently, unlike the others, points at your feet, at your eyes. He seems curious, not cruel. You nod slowly, unsure what's safe. He stands and whispers to the auctioneer, who doesn't even bother hiding a laugh. Then he tosses a tiny coin pouch onto a nearby table. The sound of 6 coins clinking together somehow feels louder than a scream. You've just been purchased. No fanfare, no applause, no triumphant music. Just a shrug from the assistant and a tug on your wrist as the new owner leads you away from the chaos. As you leave the main square, a loud cheer erupts from another platform. Someone else has just been sold. You glance back and see a boy, maybe 10, being led off in the opposite direction. You're not sure if you're lucky or just next. The walk away from the main square should feel like relief, but it doesn't. It feels like being handed off from one storm to another, just quieter. Your new owner walks ahead, not bothering to look back at you. He's tall, wiry, and wrapped in layers of faded linen and leather straps that suggest scholar with secrets, or local crypt keeper. His boots are more polished than the rest of him, which is either promising or unsettling. You're led through narrow alleys that twist between half-collapsed buildings. Laundry flaps overhead like surrender flags. A chicken darts past your feet. Somewhere, someone is yelling about a missing goat. You keep your eyes low and your pace steady. The rope at your wrist has been replaced by a rough leather leash tied to your belt. It's less painful, sure, but somehow more dehumanizing. Eventually, you stop in a small courtyard. Not much to see. One cracked fountain, a wooden bench that's trying its best, and 3 other people in varying degrees of exhaustion. They look up at you with a mix of pity and indifference. One is missing an ear. Another is peeling potatoes with something that's definitely not a kitchen knife. The third nods once and goes back to staring into space. Your new owner claps twice. Out of a side door comes the burly appraiser from earlier, the one who poked your ribs like you were a particularly lumpy melon. Great. Him again. He grunts, points to a nearby bench, and gestures for you to sit. You obey, because, well, what's the alternative? He pulls out a scroll and starts scribbling notes with a feather that's more bird than pen. Then comes the inspection. Again. This time it's worse. He starts with your feet. He lifts each one, mutters something about calluses, and jots that down. Then your knees. He pushes them forward, listening for crunches. You try not to flinch. He moves to your arms, fingers each joint, and tugs your shoulder until it pops. Then he stops. Your shoulder never popped before. With the patience of a medieval DMV worker, he grumbles something under his breath, fetches a cloth soaked in something oily, and rubs it into the joint. It burns like you've been set on fire with lemon juice. You wince. He jots that down too. Then the part you dread most. Your face. He looks in your mouth again. Because of course he does. He actually sniffs your breath this time, which feels like a violation of nature itself. He smells like old radishes and regret. He flicks your earlobes, checks your fingernails, counts your teeth, twice. There's a long pause when he gets to your eyes. He leans close, squinting, and calls over the thin man with the polished boots. They whisper. The thin man says something sharp. The appraiser sighs and writes one more note. Unclear origin, he mutters in the local tongue. That's not good. In many medieval slave markets, being foreign was a mixed bag. You could be exotic and valuable, or you could be seen as cursed, diseased, or rebellious. Historians still debate whether such labels were based on genuine misunderstanding or just convenient excuses for dehumanization. Either way, unclear origin rarely won you friends. A few minutes later, you're marched over to another part of the compound, a smaller, shadier area where a table has been set up. The appraiser points to a pile of ropes, buckets, and what might be a whip. He asks you something. You don't understand. He asks again. You shake your head. Wrong move. He slams a bucket to the ground and barks a one-word command. The missing ear guy stands up, sighs dramatically, and mimics carrying the bucket over and over. You get the idea. You nod. The appraiser finally relaxes. Quirky historical tidbit? In some regions, slaves were sold with little handwritten notes, or orally delivered scripts, that describe their features. Think medieval Pokemon cards. Strong legs, medium stamina, decent memory, frightened of goats. One particularly weird record from Naples in the 13th century describes a slave as eats quickly, but digests slowly. How anyone knew that is a question we may never want answered. After the inspection ends, the thin man claps again and gestures toward a battered wooden door. It creaks open. You walk through and find yourself in a tiny stone room. No windows, one straw mat, a cracked basin with yesterday's water, and in the corner, a rat with one eye. He stares at you like he owns the place. You sit. Your stomach growls. You're not sure if this is home or holding, but you're here now, and you're officially on the books. Your first night in the stone cell is crunchy. That's the only word for it. The straw mat crackles every time you shift, which is often, because the floor beneath it is uneven and probably older than civilization itself. The one-eyed rat has not left. He stares from his corner like some furry dungeon warden, chewing on something that might have been bread, might have been toenail. You don't ask. You sleep in jolts, your dreams a messy tangle of carts, auctions, and someone shouting, 3 copper, take it or leave it, before waking to the distant clang of a bell. Morning. Or at least market o'clock. The door creaks open and the appraiser appears again, this time with a bowl. He says something you don't understand, but shoves the bowl into your hands. It contains a lukewarm sludge that smells faintly of barley, feet, and despair. You sip it anyway. Hunger's doing the talking now. Soon you're dragged into the courtyard and handed a wooden yoke. Yes, like the cartoon kind farmers use on oxen. You and another poor soul are yoked together. One of you shorter, one of you faster. The result is a lot of stumbling and angry glares. You're being trained, apparently, and not for anything glamorous. You're hauling stones, big, uneven chunks from a half-collapsed wall, one by one, down a path, across a yard, into a pile. Then repeat, and again, and again. A mainstream historical fact slides in while your spine is screaming. Despite modern fantasy films showing slaves mostly in palace halls or chained to galleys, the bulk of medieval slavery, especially in urban areas, looked more like this: hard, repetitive, dirty labor. Water fetching, wood cutting, building repairs. If you were lucky, you became a domestic servant. If not, you were the shovel. After a few hours, you get a break. Not because anyone is kind, just because the man shouting commands needs to smoke something vaguely toxic from a long pipe. You drop the yoke and collapse near a barrel of water. The other worker beside you mutters something, half smiling. You smile back, nod, and pretend you understand. You do not. There's something reassuring about shared confusion. A fringe detail here. Some medieval slave owners enforced silent periods during labor, not because they needed quiet, but because they feared conspiracies. Whispers meant rebellion. So in some cities, if you were caught talking while working, they'd sew your lips shut. Temporarily, they claimed. Though, let's be honest, there's no temporary way to enjoy that. Back to the stones. Your hands are blistered now. Your shoulder still aches from yesterday's pop. A bee buzzes around your head and you briefly fantasize about being carried away by a heroic flock of wasps. But alas, you are not Disney's chosen one. Suddenly, there's a commotion at the gate. A horse arrives. White, speckled, dramatically over-decorated. Its rider dismounts with flair, cape sweeping like it's been trained to perform. He walks with purpose, speaks fast, gestures big. You're too far to hear details, but his boots are shiny and his beard is sculpted. Trouble. The thin man with the leather straps, your owner, meets him in the yard. They talk quickly. You notice one of the guards fidgeting with his sword. That's never a good sign. And then, your name is shouted, or at least the word people now use as your name. It sounds like someone sneezing mid-sneeze. You're unyoked, pulled forward, and made to stand straight. The rider approaches, circles you once, then flicks your sleeve with a gloved finger. He asks a question. Your owner nods. A coin purse is tossed. You've been loaned out? Here comes the scholarly debate. Were slaves allowed to be rented out for side work? And if so, did they keep any of the earnings? The answer is, occasionally. In certain towns, a skilled slave could earn money on the side, sometimes even buying their freedom. But for general laborers like you, not likely. You're a tool, not a tradesman. You're marched toward the gate. As you pass the courtyard, the one-eared man raises a thumb. Whether it's good luck or sarcastic farewell, you're not sure. And just like that, you're out of the house, on a leash again, and following Captain Cape into town. You wonder where this glamorous side quest leads. Probably not the spa. The Cape guy walks fast. His boots barely touch the ground, like he's trying to outpace the medieval air itself. You shuffle behind him, leash clipped to your belt again, trying not to trip on the cobblestones. The town looks different from this angle. Same smells, mostly onion, ash, and human funk. But now the buildings seem taller, the shadows longer, and everyone's eyes a little more judgmental. You pass a group of children playing some kind of dirt-based kicking game. One pauses to stare at you. The others laugh and yell something that, judging by the tone, isn't "Welcome to the neighborhood." The Cape guy, who you're starting to mentally nickname Sir Boots-a-Lot, doesn't explain anything. He finally stops outside a stone building with wide double doors and a hanging wooden sign. The sign has a carving of a hammer and a pair of tongs. Blacksmith. Inside, it's exactly as you'd expect. Hot, loud, and slightly dangerous. Sparks dance through the air like angry fireflies. A massive man, wearing what appears to be half a cow's worth of leather, wipes soot from his forehead and narrows his eyes at you. Sir Boots-a-Lot gestures dramatically and says something fast. The blacksmith grunts, then shrugs. Apparently, that's enough for everyone. You're handed over again. Ownership? No. Just temporary custody. You're a rental now, like a shovel or a badly behaved mule. The blacksmith claps his hands and points to the bellows. You get the message. Inflate the forge. Make it hot. Keep it going. Simple enough. Until your second pull, when the wood splinters slightly and pinches your palm. You yelp. He chuckles. Medieval humor. Here's your historical fact for the hour. Blacksmiths were often among the most respected artisans in medieval towns, but they were also deeply superstitious. Some believed the fire itself had a spirit. Others whispered that smiths could curse metal to turn against its wielder. So, yeah, no pressure there while you're feeding the fire. Eventually, the blacksmith warms up to you. Not literally. He still growls when you breathe too loud, but he stops glaring. That's progress. He even shows you how to twist a nail from raw iron. You burn 3 fingers trying, but hey, now you know. You spend most of the day in the forge. Your face gets shiny with sweat and soot. Your clothes darken, and your nose forgets what clean air smells like. But something weird happens. Time passes faster. Labor like this, brutal as it is, has a rhythm. And you're not being yelled at every 10 seconds. Well, not until the apprentice shows up. She's probably your age, maybe younger, with hands stronger than most adult bears. She eyes you suspiciously, then barks a command. You don't understand it. She repeats it louder. You nod anyway and do what feels right. Wrong choice. She groans, snatches the iron bar from you, and does it properly in 5 seconds flat. Another tidbit for your trivia brain. It wasn't uncommon for enslaved people to be apprenticed in trades. Some even became master craftsmen, but their earnings usually went to their owner. There's debate among historians whether this was a path to freedom through skill, or just another layer of exploitation dressed in a leather apron. As the sun begins to lower, Sir Boots-a-Lot returns. He inspects your hands, sniffs the air around you like he's checking for productivity, then tosses the blacksmith a coin. You're on the move again. This time, he doesn't leash you. That's odd. You follow him back through the town. People are pouring water from second-floor windows. Street dogs bark. Someone is playing a lute poorly. Very poorly. Sir Boots-a-Lot leads you to the edge of the market square and pauses. Then, in a moment that makes exactly 0 sense, he takes out a tiny mirror, checks his hair, and disappears into the crowd. You're alone. Wait, what? You glance around, heartbeat climbing. Was this a mistake? A test? A punishment? A nearby guard eyes you. You freeze. Run? Not smart. Stay? Also not ideal. Then, a voice behind you. Not Sir Boots-a-Lot. Another man, robed, older, wearing a pendant shaped like an eye. He speaks calmly, gestures for you to follow. And because you have no other options, you do. Because in a medieval slave market world, freedom isn't about choosing paths. It's about surviving the one you're forced to walk. The robed man smells like parchment and dust, and he walks as if he's pacing himself for a funeral march. Your funeral, maybe. His pendant swings as he turns sharply into a side alley, then another, then a stairwell that descends into something too dark to be safe. But safety hasn't been part of your package deal since you got here. Down the steps, it's cooler, but the air's thick, like it's been breathing itself for too long. Oil lamps flicker in sconces, casting jittery shadows on stone walls. The robed man says nothing. Eventually, you reach a low wooden door. He knocks twice, pauses, then 3 times more. A hatch slides open. 2 eyes peer out. They nod. The door creaks open to reveal a classroom? Well, kind of. It's small, but there are benches, scrolls, chalkboards, actual chalkboards, and even a rack of wax tablets. Seated around the room are 5 others, clearly not locals. One's got red hair, one's wearing something stitched from palm fronds, and one looks like they haven't slept since spring. This is a training room for slaves. The robed man gestures for you to sit. Then he speaks, not to you, but to the group. The language is strange, but after a few seconds, you catch fragments, commands, market lingo, the names of basic tools, and, surprise, surprise, how to say yes, master, in 5 dialects. Turns out you've been chosen for instruction, or maybe tested, or maybe both. You look at the other trainees. Most are older than you. All are tired, and none are speaking unless prompted. One tries to scratch their nose and gets a warning glance from the robed man. And here comes your mainstream historical fact. In larger medieval cities, particularly under Byzantine, Islamic, or Mediterranean influence, there were training centers for enslaved individuals. Those marked as household quality or skilled labor potential were taught manners, languages, and specific cultural customs to increase their resale value. It was brutal, systematic, and, yes, oddly bureaucratic. You're handed a tablet and stylus. You're shown how to copy a symbol. You fail. The robed man sighs. And again. And again. Eventually, your hand stops shaking long enough to draw something that looks vaguely like a fish, or a lowercase g having a crisis. Either way, he nods. Then it's etiquette drills, bowing, standing still for long periods, speaking softly, holding a cup the correct way. It's a bizarre performance, like someone taught finishing school inside a dungeon. One particularly surreal moment, you're taught how to pour wine into a cup without making eye contact. Apparently, in some households, looking at your master's face was seen as overstepping. Open scholarly debate surrounds whether this was a widespread custom or just something favored by hyper-paranoid nobility. But here, in this candlelit pit, it's treated like gospel. Halfway through the session, a bell rings. The robed man claps once. Everyone stands. You follow, unsure if this means break time or beatings. It's food, sort of. A clay bowl is passed around with something that could generously be called soup. There's a chunk of turnip, a mystery bean. You chew. It crunches. You stop chewing. You make eye contact with the red-haired trainee across from you. He grimaces, shrugs, and keeps eating. You do the same. Your standards are no longer high. They now exist somewhere beneath this bowl. Back in your place, you notice a wall covered in names, etched into the plaster, faded with time. Some are crossed out, some are circled. Some have a mark next to them that might be a date or an expiration warning. You're not told what they mean. You don't ask. Your body aches from the forge, your head throbs from the language drills, and your stomach is staging a protest against mystery turnip soup. But you keep sitting, stylus in hand, pretending you belong here, because you're learning something important now. Not words or posture, but how to read a room, how to know who's watching, who you can nod to, who you can't, and how silence isn't just survival, it's expected. At the end of the session, the robed man walks up and presses a mark into your shoulder. Not a brand, just ink. Temporary. But that means you're still temporary. Still for sale. Still a product. And probably headed back to the market soon. The ink smudges on your shoulder but doesn't fade. It itches slightly, like your skin knows it's been tagged. The robed man leads you and 2 others, red hair and palm fronds, up a narrow stairwell into daylight that punches your eyes with brightness. You squint, blinking at the sudden vibrancy of the outside world. The town square is already buzzing, market stalls flapping, and vendors shouting over each other like medieval auctioneers on double espresso. And now you understand what that ink means. You're part of today's inventory. You're lined up with 10 others along a raised wooden platform in the square. Yes, a literal stage. Below you, a crowd gathers. Locals, travelers, merchants, bored kids. Some carry pouches heavy with coins. Others just look for entertainment. One man near the front eats roasted chestnuts with unnerving intensity. Behind him, a woman shields her parasol from the sun while scanning each item on display with the precision of someone shopping for ripe produce. You shuffle in place, trying to look presentable, neutral, definitely not terrified. The auction begins. The auctioneer is everything you'd expect. Loud, sweaty, with a voice that booms like it wants to knock bricks loose. He holds a staff for no reason, except dramatic flair. One by one, he points, calls out details, and launches into rapid descriptions. Strong back, 10 fingers, no visible boils. When he reaches you, there's a pause. He tilts his head. Then, in what sounds like exaggerated sarcasm, he says something that makes the crowd laugh. You assume it wasn't complimentary. A buyer steps forward and squints up at you. He has a large feathered hat and a scar across his lip. He points and asks a question. The auctioneer responds. Another laugh from the crowd. The buyer doesn't look convinced. He turns away. This is worse than being chosen. This is being dismissed. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Medieval slave auctions often included both physical inspections and public performance. Sellers exaggerated virtues, hid flaws, and sometimes even staged demonstrations. Slaves were made to lift heavy weights, walk a line, or speak a few memorized phrases, all to simulate quality. Next to you, red hair is sold. He's handed off to a woman with gleaming rings and a servant carrying a parasol. He doesn't look back. Palm fronds is sold to a man who smells like fish even from 6 feet away. And you? You're not sold. Not yet. Which is its own kind of failure. A guard comes to collect the leftovers. You and 2 others are escorted behind the auction stand, past a pen of goats, and into a shaded enclosure with a canvas roof. There, you wait. Again. While you sit, trying not to exist too loudly, a wrinkled man with ink-stained hands enters. He's a scribe, judging by the roll of parchment and the feather pen behind his ear. He calls your number. Yes, number. Your name is officially irrelevant, and beckons you forward. He points to a new list. On it are a set of symbols and roles. You're asked, through a translator, to choose from the following: stable work, kitchen duty, porter labor, or city maintenance. You ask what city maintenance means. The translator shrugs. You go with kitchen duty. At least food is involved. Here's the fringe tidbit. In some cities, enslaved people working in kitchens developed coded languages to warn each other of angry masters, incoming guests, or spoiled food. Whistle once, it's rats. Whistle twice, it's the tax collector. You're branded on your sleeve with a mark stitched into the fabric. Kitchen property. Not ownership, just designation. If you're found somewhere other than the kitchen, or carrying something that isn't a pot or a ladle, you can be punished for role violation. Freedom, optional. Uniform, mandatory. As you're escorted away from the auction site, you pass another group coming in. New arrivals. One is gagged. One is missing an eye. One looks rich, or used to be. You glance at them. They glance at you. The circle keeps turning. And you? You've just been placed somewhere inside it. You're marched through a series of alleys that start to smell increasingly like boiled cabbage and regret. Then, a low building comes into view, thick stone walls, no windows on the lower floor, and a large wooden door that swings open with an oily creak. Welcome to the kitchen block. The heat hits you first. It's the kind of heat that clings to your lungs and makes your eyes water. Wood smoke, garlic, and scorched meat tangle in the air. The kitchen is alive with a noise, blades chopping, water splashing, people shouting instructions in multiple dialects. You're shown a corner, handed a cloth, and given a task so simple, it sounds insulting. Scrub turnips. But you do it, because scrubbing turnips beats being scrubbed out of existence. The girl next to you gives a sideways glance. She's maybe 12, barefoot, and working faster than your brain can process. Don't peel too deep, she mutters. They yell. You nod. You peel gently. You get yelled at anyway. Here's your historical fact to season the stew. Many noble households relied entirely on enslaved or indentured labor to maintain kitchens, especially during feast seasons. Large estates might cook for dozens or even hundreds daily, which meant long hours and grueling prep. No modern mixers or temperature control, just fire and frantic motion. There's an older man shouting near the hearth. He's the cook. Not the head chef, just the cook. No one says his name. He rules this place with a soup ladle in one hand and a cleaver in the other. When someone drops a bowl, he hurls a spoon so hard it sticks in a beam. You try not to make eye contact. Lunch rush is a blur. Huge cauldrons bubbling with stew, trays of pickled vegetables, flatbreads so dry they might have been baked last century. You're tasked with tasting the broth for salt level, which feels like a trap. It is. You say, too salty, and they toss more salt in. You say, not salty enough, and they toss you a look that says, mind your place. Fringe tidbit time. In some medieval courts, taste testers weren't just for poison. They were also used to gauge food quality for noble guests. But some scholars debate whether testers were genuinely valued or simply expendable mouthpieces in the grand theater of hospitality. In a quiet moment, rare, but it happens, you sit near the fire pit and drink something thin and warm from a wooden bowl. A rat scampers across the rafters. You're too tired to care. A whisper reaches you from the girl across the prep table. You're new, she says. Don't mess up, or they'll send you to the pits. You don't ask what the pits are. You already know it's worse than scrubbing root vegetables. As the sun dips, you're told to clean the knives. You do. One slips. It slices the edge of your palm. It stings, but you've had worse. Like that forge blister still peeling on your thumb. The cook notices. He says nothing, but later, someone drops a loaf. And instead of throwing the cleaver, he just grunts and kicks a bucket. Maybe you earned 1/2 ounce of mercy. Maybe he just missed. At day's end, you're not sent to the auction block. You're not paraded or punished. Instead, you're led to a tiny cell behind the kitchen, where straw mats line the floor and the air smells of old onions and damp feet. You find a corner, you lie down. You stare at the ceiling beams and wonder if they ever think of collapsing. The girl speaks again, voice soft in the dark. You make it a week. They stop noticing you. You ask, and then what? She pauses. Then you stop noticing yourself. And just like that, your thoughts start to dissolve into the soft drone of kitchen echoes, the scrape of ladles, and the creak of tired bones against wood. No chains, no shouting, just silence. And the quiet truth that here, in the kitchen, you're not alive. You're merely not dead. The days start to blend. Turnips, heat, the cook shouting, and the constant motion of your own limbs. You wake with sore wrists and sleep with salt-crusted fingers. Someone hands you bread in the morning, and by evening, you can't remember if you actually ate it or just dreamed it while peeling onions. Then, one morning, a change. A woman enters the kitchen, regal, thin, and dressed in silk that clearly wasn't stitched anywhere near the city. Her eyes scan the staff like she's reviewing livestock. She points at you. You freeze. She says something to the cook. He grunts, shrugs, and gestures for you to go. No explanation. Just a push toward the doorway. You're taken into the main estate house. Stone arches, mosaic tiles, walls that feel like they could trap sound for centuries. The woman speaks again, this time slower, and a young male servant translates. You're to serve in the upper chambers. Food carrying, wine pouring, cleanup. Nothing heavy. Your first reaction is relief. Your second is dread. Because here's the catch. Upstairs, slaves are seen, not just used, which means mistakes are not just inconvenient, they're punishable. And people up here punish with creativity. Here's a mainstream historical fact. Medieval nobles often treated their household slaves as extensions of their furniture, clean, silent, and invisible. But when things went wrong, wine spilled, guests offended, doors opened too loudly, they were also the first to absorb blame. Some scholars argue that the proximity to power made household roles deceptively dangerous. You walk into the dining hall, golden plat. The dining hall is impossibly wide, its stone floor polished to a shine that mirrors the long glimmering table stretching through its center. Arched windows filter warm sunlight through colored glass panes, casting crimson and sapphire ripples across the walls. It's beautiful, if you forget for a moment that you're here to carry meat platters, not admire architecture. You stand silently near the corner as the nobles begin to file in. Silks rustle, gold bangles clink softly, voices murmur in at least 3 languages. The woman who picked you stands at the head of the table now, all poise and control. She doesn't look at you again. You're shown your role by another servant, slightly older, with the wary eyes of someone who survived too many feasts. He whispers directions fast. Hold the pitcher from the base, not the neck. Don't look them in the eyes unless they ask something. Never serve from the left, always the right. If you drop anything, leave it. Do not try to clean it yourself. You nod, gripping the wine jug with every ounce of focus you have. The meal begins. You hover behind a merchant lord who looks like he swallowed a cannonball, round, red, and sweating before the soup even arrives. You pour wine. He grunts. You move on. Another guest flicks their fingers for you to refill their cup. They don't say thank you. Midway through the meal, a silver platter slips from a younger servant's hand and crashes onto the floor, scattering dates and nuts across the polished tile. Everyone freezes. The servant, a boy with barely the fuzz of a beard, drops to his knees, trying to scoop the food back onto the tray. He doesn't finish. A guard grabs him by the collar and drags him out, silently, like it's part of the choreography. No one says a word. The feast continues. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In many parts of medieval Europe and the Middle East, the punishments for disobedient household slaves varied drastically, from public lashings to confinement, or in more refined courts, forced fasting or temporary isolation in windowless cells. Open scholarly debate still lingers about whether more urbanized courts were truly less cruel or just more discreet. You're not discreet. You bump a spoon when reaching across a guest's shoulder. It clatters but doesn't fall. No one reacts. You exhale so quietly it barely leaves your chest. Later, you carry a bowl of stewed lentils to the high table. The scent is rich, spiced with cumin, maybe cinnamon. As you approach, one noblewoman lifts her hand and says something sharp. You freeze. She points to your hands. They're shaking. Not much, but enough. She snaps her fingers. The same guard from earlier steps forward. You brace. But the noblewoman waves him off. Instead, she takes a folded cloth and tosses it at your chest. Wrap your hands next time. The translator mutters. She doesn't like tremors. Says it makes her nervous. You nod. A nod is safe. You wrap your hands. You keep going. The hours stretch. Courses change. Bread to fish, to game bird, to jellied fruits and honeyed walnuts. You've never seen this much food in your life, and none of it is yours. You begin to understand how the scent alone can fill you, how hunger mutates into a low, constant thrum behind your ribs. Here's your fringe tidbit. Some medieval courts required that household slaves fast during feast days, especially if serving food directly. It was seen as a test of obedience and purity. Some scholars suggest this was more common in Persian and Byzantine-influenced cultures, while others argue it was simply a convenient excuse to keep food costs down. Eventually, the feast ends. Guests disperse, plates are cleared, you're allowed a crust of bread and a half bowl of thin broth in the servant hall, and somehow it tastes more luxurious than anything you carried today. You return to your straw mat that night, still in the kitchen quarters because you're not permanent staff yet. Your fingers are red and raw, but you're still breathing. No lashes, no guard dragging you out by the collar. That counts as a win now. In the quiet, the girl from before whispers, "Upstairs changes you." You ask, "How?" She doesn't answer right away. Then, quietly, you start to think you belong there. But you don't. You belong wherever they say you do. And tomorrow, they might say something different. You rise the next morning before the first rooster crows. Because the first rooster is apparently a slacker. The kitchen block is already humming when you arrive, but you're handed a slip of parchment instead of a ladle. It's not a message, it's a transfer notice. You're being reassigned. Again. Turns out you made just enough of an impression upstairs that someone remembered your face, but not enough to keep you. The lady in silk? She's rotating you out. Temporary eyes, the servant mutters. She likes changing the decor. You're sent to the streets. Specifically, city maintenance. Remember that from the auction scribes list? You dodged it once. Not this time. You follow a thin man with a leathery skin and a sour smell through a maze of alleys until you reach the edge of the city walls. He hands you a spade, a water flask, and a very stained tunic that's somehow worse than what you're wearing. You swap anyway, because you don't get choices. You get instructions. And here's your first one. Clean the trench. The trench runs along the outer road, filled with a stew of mud, waste, and things you'd rather not think about. The smell punches you in the throat. This, they say, is what keeps the city from flooding when it rains. Here's your historical fact to grimace through. Many medieval cities relied on enslaved or indentured workers to manage basic infrastructure, like clearing drainage canals, removing chamber pot waste, or reinforcing walls with mortar and stone. In cities with advanced aqueducts or cisterns, these workers operated behind the scenes, keeping the systems alive without credit or compensation. So you dig, you shovel, you try to breathe through your mouth. Next to you, a boy barely 15 gags and drops his spade. A guard whacks him behind the knees with a stick. Not enough to injure, just enough to hurt. The boy keeps digging. A woman nearby, covered in flecks of dried plaster, mutters something about latrine duty being worse. You don't ask for clarification. Midday brings a short break. You sit beneath a crumbling archway, gnawing on a dried fig that tastes like old parchment and defeat. The guard hands out water with the same enthusiasm someone might reserve for dousing a dying campfire. Fringe tidbit time. In certain cities, like late medieval Cairo and parts of Moorish Spain, slaves assigned to sewer or aqueduct duty sometimes developed small repair gangs with their own hierarchy, nicknames, and signals. They weren't respected, but they were, in a strange way, organized. Some scholars debate whether this formed the earliest prototype for later public works crews. Back in the trench, you dig until your fingers go numb. Occasionally, you pull up something unexpected, a rusted coin, a shattered plate, a human tooth. You don't ask. Your shoulders ache. Your legs tremble. At one point, you lean on your spade for a breath, and the overseer snaps at you. Keep moving, or I'll plant you where you stand. You don't think it's a metaphor? As the sun starts its long, low arc across the rooftops, you're moved to the next task, sweeping waste from the main street. Not dirt, actual waste. Leftovers from carts, spilled ale, worse. You sweep while carts roll by inches from your elbows, merchants curse at each other, and a child throws an apple core at your feet with a laugh. You don't respond. You just sweep. That night, you're housed not in the kitchen cell, but in a stone basement with 3 others. 2 men and a woman. No straw, just stone. The woman hums to herself, tuneless and hoarse. One of the men has a cough that sounds permanent. You curl in a corner, using your arm as a pillow. Here's the thing about maintenance duty. No one sees you, but everyone depends on you. You're invisible, until you stop showing up. Then they remember you existed, but only long enough to replace you. As you drift off to sleep on that cold floor, your muscles scream louder than your thoughts. You don't dream. You barely breathe. You've moved from auction block to kitchen, from dining hall to sewer, and somehow, impossibly, you're still here. You're not surviving. You're persisting. And honestly, you're not sure which is worse. By now, the smell has settled into your skin like it's part of your personality. No amount of scrubbing removes the city trench from your hands, but you're learning to stop noticing. Which is convenient because your next assignment doesn't smell better. You're sent to the tannery district? Yes, leather. If the kitchen was fire and shouting, and the trenches were mud and hopelessness, the tannery is something else entirely. It's acid and decay, and the overwhelming sense that nothing in this place has ever been clean. The foreman here barely looks at you. He just gestures toward a row of soaking pits, shallow stone basins filled with a stew of water, lye, animal fat, and historically accurate drum roll, please. Fermented dog dung. No, really. Mainstream historical fact. Medieval tanneries frequently used animal excrement, especially dog dung, to help soften hides. The ammonia content broke down the fats in the skins. It worked, sure, but it also turned entire neighborhoods into biohazard zones. People who worked in tanneries were usually shoved to the edge of town, out of sight, out of polite society, and very much out of nose range. You lower your first hide into the pit. It's heavier than it looks, and slick with something that defies polite description. The foreman grunts approval. You are now officially a tanner's apprentice. Congratulations. The process is endless. Soaking, scraping, rinsing. Every hide has hair that needs removing, and you're handed a blunt blade and shown how to drag it across the surface without slicing the leather or your own hand. You fail once, nick your palm. Nothing deep, but the foreman notices. He rips a strip from an old cloth, tosses it at you, and moves on. You wrap your hand and keep going. A few hours in, you stop trying to breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help. The air here has texture. And, according to the woman next to you, one of the rare slaves who speaks freely, it gets worse in the rain. Oh, and if you find a rat in the pit, she adds, just fish it out. The skins sell anyway. Fringe tidbit. Some tanneries in Central Europe kept records of rat counts. Not for hygiene purposes, just to track seasonal infestations. And while health regulations were occasionally enforced by city councils, many scholars argue these were more about controlling smells for wealthy neighborhoods than protecting laborers. You lose track of time. The sun arcs overhead and disappears. The tannery has no official closing hour, just a point when the foreman declares he's seen enough movement. You're allowed to rinse your arms in a filthy basin that might be doing more harm than good. Then you're herded into a canvas tent pitched behind the workshop. Your new lodging. It's not terrible. 1 blanket per person, a soft spot on the earth floor, and no one has lice. Yet, as you lie back, aching and dazed, someone starts humming. Not the same tune the coughing woman sang in the sewer cell. A different one. Softer. Older. You can't place it. And that's when it hits you. You haven't seen your reflection in days. Not since you left the auction. Not since the kitchen steam fogged every surface. Not since the trenches. Not even here, where water is everywhere, but not clean. You try to picture yourself, but the face that comes to mind is blurring around the edges, sunken, dirt smudged, not quite belonging to you. You close your eyes and think, if I vanish tonight, who notices? There's no answer, just the squeak of rats in the canvas eaves, the stretch of old leather drying in the moonlight, and your own heartbeat, slow and steady, like someone knocking from inside a locked room. You're still here, and tomorrow, you'll lift another hide, smell another pit, scrape another pelt, and you'll keep doing it until you're useful, or replaceable, or both. The days melt together in the tannery. You lose track of the date, the month, maybe even the year. Your hands are blistered. Your nails are black with grime. And at some point, you stop trying to wipe the sweat from your brow. It just runs down, mixing with the stink and drying into your collar. Then something strange happens. You get good at it. Not heroic good. Just unnoticed, efficient, fast enough with the scraping, accurate with the cutting, quiet enough to not get barked at. You even learn how to time your steps across the slick planks so you don't slide face first into a pit of lye and manure. Some would call that progress. One morning, you're told to follow a different worker. No explanation, just a gesture. You're led through a maze of alleyways until the tannery stench fades, replaced by something slightly more metallic. You arrive at a forge, a blacksmith's yard roaring with heat and clanging iron. Trial duty, someone mutters. They rotate workers here when someone dies or passes out. You're given tongs and a leather apron stiff with soot. The smith, a bald giant with a voice like rolling thunder, points at a glowing horseshoe in the coals. He doesn't speak much, just grunts. You learn quick. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Medieval cities often had open-air forges that used enslaved or bonded laborers for dangerous, repetitive work, bellows pumping, coal hauling, slag removal. Apprenticeship was rare for slaves unless their owner saw a profit in training them. Some cities outlawed slaves from becoming true smiths, fearing armed uprisings. You're not learning to make swords. You're hauling buckets of coal. You're cooling iron bars in troughs. You're swinging a hammer not to shape metal, but to flatten rivets while someone else does the real work. Still, compared to the tannery, it's almost pleasant. Almost. There's a rhythm to the forge. You sweat, yes, but it's dry heat, not swampy decay. You hear yourself think. You even hum under your breath between tasks. The smith notices once. Quiet hum, he grunts. Good focus. You blink. That's praise? You file it away like treasure. Fringe tidbit. In some medieval African and Middle Eastern cultures, blacksmiths held an almost mystical status. They were feared, respected, sometimes even ostracized, not because of social class, but because of the fire and mystery of their craft. Enslaved laborers at these forges were both necessary and invisible, close to something sacred, but never part of it. Back in your forge, you learn the smith's dog has free run of the yard. a lanky creature with half a tail and a fondness for licking ash off boots. You let it follow you once on your coal run and share a bite of your bread. It becomes your shadow. You don't name it, but you think the name Smoke fits. Then comes the bad day. Someone spills water on the forge floor. Steam rises, fast, unexpected. You slip. Your hand hits the edge of a hot blade, cooling, but still sharp. You yelp and blood drips instantly. The smith grabs your wrist, douses it in vinegar, wraps it in cloth, then, shockingly, tells you to sit. Rest, he says. Can't swing hammer with missing fingers. You sit, dazed, waiting for the inevitable punishment. It doesn't come. He shrugs. Maybe keep you. You work hard, smell better than tannery rats. That's a compliment. You nod, unsure whether to be grateful or just mildly offended on behalf of your past self. Here's an open scholarly debate. How often were slaves rewarded with preferential jobs in urban industries? Some argue that skill-based assignments were pragmatic. Masters wanted profits. Others believe it was more about punishment avoidance. Good behavior earned less pain, not more freedom. The truth probably sits somewhere messy in the middle. That night, you sleep behind the forge wall, curled near a stack of kindling. Smoke, the dog, not the air, curls up next to your feet. It's the warmest you've been in weeks. You dream faintly of tools that aren't shackles, of crafting something lasting, of being seen as useful before being seen as replaceable. Then you wake, hand aching. The smith grunts. Come on, still got 10 toes, get to work. You get up, and you do. The forge becomes your world. One clanging, fiery corner of the city where time is measured not in days, but in embers and ash. Your cut hand slowly heals, wrapped in strips of linen that get filthier with each shift. The scar will stay, a crooked little memory of the day you almost ruined your usefulness. And maybe, just maybe, the smith's gruff muttering has turned into something like mentorship. He doesn't teach you the trade. Not properly. You're still a slave, after all. But he lets you watch. When he tempers iron, when he folds steel, you're close enough to feel the heat on your eyelashes. And when he tests a blade's edge against his thumbnail, you try to copy the motion later with a stick behind the shed. He doesn't stop you. He doesn't encourage you either. But that's still something. One morning, as you stack charcoal, a man in city robes stops by. He's inspecting workers for the town watch, looking for someone to carry supplies and clean gear at the barracks. He points to you. The smith grunts. Decent back, doesn't faint in sun. And with that glowing resume, you are traded again. This time to the military quarter. Now, don't get excited. You're not swinging swords or training with horses. You're hauling buckets of water to fill troughs. You're oiling shields with a rag soaked in something that smells like garlic and regret. You're feeding pigs. Literal pigs. Here's your historical fact. Medieval garrisons, especially those in busy trade cities, often had embedded labor forces, sometimes enslaved, who handled upkeep, cooked food, cleaned weapons, and patched armor. Only a small elite trained for combat. The rest lived on the fringes of military life, vital but forgotten. Your uniform, if it can be called that, is a faded tunic with a broken clasp. You tuck it into your belt to keep from tripping. Every morning begins with trumpet blasts, far too early, and ends with someone drunkenly vomiting into a hay pile. And in between, noise. So much noise. You sweep straw, you dodge sparring nights, you clean up after horses who have absolutely no sense of timing. But you're seeing the city differently now. From rooftops, from watch posts, from walls. The garrison isn't glamorous, but it gives you views. You start to notice escape routes, weak spots, which gates open for what reasons, which guards drink too much, which ones are kind, and which ones absolutely, positively are not. You meet one, Sir Alderic. He doesn't bother learning your name, just calls you boy, regardless of your actual gender or age. He hands you his sweaty linens without a glance, and once throws a chicken bone at you because the stew was too cold. You learn to steer clear. Fringe tidbit. In some medieval militias, especially in Eastern Europe and the Balkans, certain enslaved workers were rumored to have memorized watch cycles and later sold that information to raiders for small payments, or, rarely, freedom. Historians disagree on how common this was, but it sparked more than a few conspiracies. You think about that often, not because you were plotting a rebellion, though, let's be honest, you fantasize a little, but because it's proof. People notice things, even people like you. Then comes weapons inspection day. You're ordered to polish a rack of short swords. The oil stings your cuts, and one blade slips, slicing a notch into your thumb. You flinch. Sir Alderic sees the blood and snorts. Should have sold you to the brothel, he mutters. The room laughs. You don't. You swallow hard, say nothing. Later, in the barracks kitchen, the cook, an older woman with a missing tooth and too many opinions, presses a clean rag into your hand. Don't let 'em break you, she says quietly. Not unless they pay extra. She winks. You don't laugh, but you nod. Here's a scholarly debate worth your evening thoughts. Were these tiny kindnesses acts of rebellion? Some argue yes, micro-resistances, little sparks of agency in a suffocating system. Others say they were survival tactics. The difference, perhaps, lies in how they're remembered. That night, you sleep in the garrison loft, above the horses. The air is hot, sour, thick with flies, but you're out of sight. Smoke the forge dog didn't follow you here. You miss him, but you don't miss the trench or the tannery. You're not comfortable, but you are adapting. And in this world, that might be the closest thing to surviving. Morning comes with a horn blast so loud, it rattles your molars. You're already awake, because the barracks rooster, who you're now convinced is a demon in feathery disguise, always crows half an hour too early. Still, you're up, moving, following orders with a kind of sleepwalking accuracy. Today, you're sent to the outer walls. Not for battle. Don't flatter yourself. You're there to carry crates of stones up the watchtower steps. Why stones? Because a new foreman has decided that part of the wall needs reinforcement, and who better to do the lugging than the person who doesn't get paid, can't complain, and statistically breaks only one bone per project? The view from the top is spectacular, though. You pause for a second, pretending to adjust your footing, and let your eyes wander. The city stretches below like a half-burned tapestry. You can see the market where you were sold, though from up here, it looks like nothing more than a blur of cloth and movement. You spot the forge chimney in the distance, the tannery's rooftop, still somehow smoldering, and the thin, glistening thread of the trench line where you once stood knee-deep in other people's disasters. It's surreal. You were there, and now you're here, barely. Historical fact time. Most medieval city walls were maintained by laborers, often unpaid or indentured, who carried materials, filled mortar, and even risked their lives during sieges to haul supplies under fire. Slaves were typically forbidden from bearing arms, but were essential in fortification projects, especially in larger cities or regions under frequent threat. You descend the steps just in time to see a fight break out near the stables. A knight is screaming about a stolen dagger. Everyone is accused, everyone is lined up, including you. Sir Alderic is red-faced and furious. Search them all, he snaps. A guard yanks at your belt, checks your sleeves, pulls off your boot. Nothing. The dagger turns up in a feed bucket 20 minutes later. A stable boy hid it, too scared to admit he borrowed it to open a grain sack. Alderic doesn't apologize, just storms off. The guard who searched you, though, hands your boot back with a shrug. Could have been worse, he says. You nod. That's your gratitude quota for the day. Fringe tidbit. In certain Iberian garrisons, slaves were employed specifically as scapegoats, blamed for crimes to preserve noble reputations. Sometimes they were paid off quietly after a flogging. Other times they vanished without explanation. The practice was never codified, but shows up often in local chronicles. You're lucky this time, but the message is clear. You can be blamed for anything, at any time. Later that week, you're sent on your first delivery run outside the walls, escorting a cart of arrowheads to a nearby outpost. Not alone, of course. A guard rides up front, half asleep and chewing something that smells like moldy honey. You sit in the back with the crates. The countryside opens up around you. It's greener than you remembered. Less smoke, more wind. You feel a pang, nostalgia, grief, something you don't have time to unpack. At the outpost, you unload in silence. Then wait. You spot a boy, not much younger than you, mucking out a pen. He glances at you, then does a double take. He raises 2 fingers. A gesture. It means something. Not to you, but clearly to someone. He does it again. You shake your head. He approaches, quietly, hands you a piece of crusty bread and whispers, "When the crows gather at dusk, go east." You blink. What? He walks off. Doesn't look back. An open, scholarly debate. Were there widespread underground networks that aided slaves and servants across medieval Europe? Some argue yes, especially along trade routes and river towns. Others believe these moments were isolated, uncoordinated, and more myth than map. You hold the bread in your lap the whole ride back. You don't eat it. You just think, is this real? A trap? A joke? You've spent so long surviving by not standing out, not hoping, but now, someone gave you bread and a sign. When the crows gather at dusk, you start watching the sky. You start noticing them almost immediately. The crows. They gather near the barracks kitchen, picking through garbage. They sit on the walls during sword drills. They tilt their heads when you walk by, as if they know something you don't. You try not to stare, don't want to be the slave who's gone bird mad. But once you're looking, you can't stop. Days pass. The bread from the outpost boy has gone stale, but you still keep it tucked beneath your sleeping mat, like a talisman. Not for luck exactly, but for proof that maybe something else exists beyond this endless cycle of sweat and orders and stone hauling. Then, one dusk, the sky swells with dark wings. You're on roof duty, repairing tiles that, frankly, aren't worth the trouble. And you pause when you see them. A true murder of crows. Dozens. Circling high, then dropping low, then vanishing east over the city wall. Your heart thuds in your throat. Is this it? You climb down slowly, pretending to limp. The foreman barely glances up as you vanish behind a cart of firewood, and you walk east, past the forge, past the broken fence where smoke once slept, past the tannery's burned down awning, and the pit where your shoes were dissolved into something unholy. You move with purpose, head down, arms tucked, pretending like you know exactly where you're allowed to be. Historical fact to hold in your pocket: runaway slaves in medieval Europe face public branding, forced mutilation, or death if caught. But escape still happened, more than most textbooks admit. Some disguised themselves as pilgrims. Others joined roving bands of workers, and a few simply walked out, unnoticed. You're not unnoticed, but you're not stopped. At the edge of the city, near a collapsed mill, you find him, the outpost boy, waiting. He hands you a sack. Inside, dried beans, a water skin, a piece of flint, and a rolled scrap of parchment. You squint. It's a map. Rough, half-torn, barely readable. But it points to the forest edge, beyond the hills, past the trade road, toward something marked only with a line of inked X's. You look up. What is this? A path, he says. You laugh. Once. Bitterly. To where? His answer's quiet. To people who don't ask where you came from. You want to believe him. More than you've wanted anything in months. Fringe tidbit. Some medieval religious sects, including certain heretical groups like the Cathars and the Brethren of the Free Spirit, were rumored to shelter fugitives, including escaped slaves. Historians debate whether this was altruism, recruitment, or just another kind of exploitation cloaked in robes. The boy nods to the woods. They move every few weeks. You have to hurry, and you can't stop. You hesitate, your legs are sore, your hands are cracked, your back screams from weeks of labor. You've slept on stone, been whipped, burned, forgotten, but your mind is clear. You take a breath, and you run. Not fast. Your body doesn't do fast anymore, but with a stubborn, even rhythm. Past the fields, past a watching guard who shouts something you don't hear, past the orchards where the trees grow wild and the fruit rots untouched. You run until the city falls away, until only wind and brambles and sky remain. Open scholarly debate. Is escape success in slavery narratives, or just another chapter? Some argue that freedom without healing isn't freedom at all. Others believe that the act of escape, even failed, is the ultimate human declaration. I am not what you made me. You find shelter beneath a tree, hours later. Eat the bread, drink the water, start a fire with shaking hands, and for the first time in a long while, you sleep without someone's boot print on your shoulder, without chains clinking in your dreams. You're not safe. You're not free, but you're moving. And maybe that's enough. Your breath slows as the stars come out above your small camp. No voices call your name. No footsteps echo toward you in the dark. Just crickets, distant owls, the soft snap of your tiny fire. You let yourself lie back, letting your spine melt into the earth, the ache of the day dissolve into the quiet of the night. The forest isn't a guarantee. Tomorrow might be hard. The path may vanish. But tonight, you have food in your belly, warmth near your skin, and silence wrapped around your thoughts. You remember the market noise, the heat of the forge, the sting of soap in your eyes, and all of it feels far now, blurred like a half-remembered dream, or maybe a nightmare you finally stepped out of. The wind brushes your cheeks, gentle, cool, and for the first time, you're not counting footsteps. You're just breathing, slowly, fully. You survived what should have ended you, not because you fought, but because you endured. Let that thought settle into your chest. Let it rock you toward sleep. You're here, and that matters. Now let your eyes drift shut and rest.